please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll begin with the roll call. Gary Stalboy.
Here.
Ted Maine.
Here.
Linda Chardon.
Here.
John Peterson.
Here.
Dean Gorman. John Cadella.
Here.
Linda Fedor.
Here.
Lisa Carrick.
Here.
Stephanie Walsh.
Here.
All right, first order of business is the minutes for last week's meeting. Do you see any amendments, corrections that need to be made?
I move we accept them as is.
All right.
Second.
Motion has been made to accept the minutes as is by John, seconded by Lynn. Any other discussion? Any abstentions? Oh, excuse me, we should call for all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, thank you. Our first and only order of business for tonight is the presentation of the Board of Education's budget for the upcoming 2025-2026 year. And at this time, I would welcome to the superintendent to the floor.
Thank you. Do you need me to stand at the podium for the purpose of filming, or is it better if I'm here?
I don't know, which is your best side?
I think it would be dangerous for me to answer that.
I don't know if this is on or not.
Oh, you don't know if this is on or not?
I don't think so.
I think you're loud enough. You can do it over there.
Good evening.
You can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Brenton. This is my 4th year as superintendent of Plainfield Public Schools. This is the 4th budget that I'm presenting to you as part of the 25-26 school year. I have about 20 slides I'm going to go through to talk about highlight items in the budget. I actually have 102 other slides that are available on the website that go deeper into pieces, but I'm not going to make that as part of the presentation. However, if you ask me a question, I may refer to one of those slides to answer it. So speaking first, we take a look at building the budget. I always start with a zero-based budget, taking a look at everything that we need. The major drivers are, of course, our student need, the obligations that we have by the student contract. There are several things. Does this work now? Okay.
We'll see.
All right. There are. I'm going to talk into it as though it is working. We just had a great musical, so I can act. Economic inflation is a factor. I'll speak to that. And then in this particular budget, you'll see I have a section dedicated to projected reduction in grant revenue. There's 2 places we're anticipating getting less grant revenue in the 25-26 year. Our priorities going into this, first and foremost, was to focus on developing numeracy. So hear me talk about our math program and the things that we're doing. Number 2 is my largest fiscal investment is in student safety. I'll speak to school resource officer and security. The third thing you'll see is I'm talking about investing in the development of our staff, and then talking about investing in systems and organizational efficiencies within the school budget. I would like to highlight that you have in your packet our current student enrollment demographics. These particular enrollment demographics speak to the number of students that we have in each one of our schools. I know they're a little difficult to read right here, but you can see we're anticipating 1,874 students next year that we have there. We have approximately 114 students right now that we're paying tuition for in other magnet schools. When we take a look at enrollment and staffing projections, you'll note that one of the things that I've commented on, and you'll see, is that we do have a reduction in total staffing at the elementary level. We have several schools that are running 3 classes per grade at Moosup and at Shepherd Hill. When I started, we were running 4 classes, 5 in some of the grades at the elementary level during COVID for space. That is also directly within your packet. We take a look at our budget timeline. Our initial budget, December 9th, and something I would tell the community and tell the Board of Finance is that we're always budgeting, so we're constantly looking through these pieces. Our initial budget coming from the administrative team was 6.14%. We made our internal reductions. We reduced that budget cut down to 5.27, which is where I'm presenting it at this time. In that budget, 41% is certified salaries, 18% is non-certified salaries, 15% is benefits. I like to share this with the public so that people can see 75% of the budget, or very close to, is in personnel and salary. When you run a school, your money is in your people. The remainder of it, about 3% is purchase services. We do have some increases in utilities. 6% of our budget is in tuition. Supplies, transportation together make up about 15%, which gets us to the $40,207,822. When we take a look at the areas that saw the greatest increase, and I'll speak to this, I'll speak to why capital improvements sees an 82% increase. I'll speak to why that object code sees those pieces. I'll talk specifically to salaries and benefits. I'll walk through each one of those pieces. If you have questions in the binder, you can interrupt me in the middle if you have a question. I'm happy to come back to it. When we take a look at the contractual salary increases, you'll see this directly in your binder. Contract, we're looking at $1,095,707. Those are currently existing contracts and negotiated increases, what that comes to for next year. And the benefits increase are increasing $147,000. What I'm going to talk to you about item by item, because if I was on the Board of the Finance, the question I would have is, Mr. Brenton, you presented a $2 million increase. What's in that $2 million increase? So I want to walk through the items that we're asking for. I'm going to tell you what's new and what is not new, and I'll speak specifically to each one of these items. So the first thing I want to talk about is our largest increase is in special education. Our special education costs are over $300,000 higher in this year's budget than they were in last year's budget. We're seeing an increase in the percentage of students identified with disabilities. That's in part dedicated to the high number of disconnected youth in this part of the state. Another part of it is what we're seeing with youth coming out of COVID. I personally believe some of it's related to electronic devices, but I find parents shut their ears off when I say that. When we take a look at where we are, our Plainfield School District special education percentage increased in 24-25 to almost 21%. It was 17% just 5 years ago. In our schools, we run a lot of programs to try to avoid expensive outplacements and to keep students serviced in the least restrictive environment. This means that the more time they have with their peers, with other peers, learning from the teachers that we have. We run grade level support in every school. We run a push and pull out model. We have a responsive support program for social, emotional, and behavioral students at Plainfield High School, Plainfield Central, Plainfield Memorial, and Shepherd Hill. You'll notice the only school that doesn't have that is Moosup Elementary. Those students go to the program at Shepherd Hill. We have a dedicated program social worker at the high school for this program. We have a shared program social worker at Plainfield Memorial and Plainfield Central. We have an ILP, intensive learning program, that is a program for students with autism. That program exists in the same 4 skill schools. We have a program at Plainfield Central, which is called SAILS. That's Social Academic Inclusion and Life Skills, and a Life Skills program at Plainfield High School. Incredibly impressed by the staff in those programs and what they do. We also run transitional programs for students who you might normally think of aged out but are 18 to 22, transitioning those programs to work. So those are all things that we in Plainfield schools do internally. And all specialized programs have access to BCBAs, which is a board-certified behavioral analyst who helps work with staff and students to put together plans and ensure students have the support. With all these supports, we're still seeing a budget increase in special education of $337,841 projected for next year. That's an overall increase in tuitions, fixed, of $227,464. That includes an increase for special education out of district placements. That includes changes in grant funding from the state. That includes a decrease in the number of special ed students that we're paying tuition for in public programs, a decrease in excess cost reimbursement. The overall salary changes in special education are $43,000 when we look at the staff. We've decreased 2 special educators. We've decreased 2 paraeducators. We've brought in BCBA in replacement of the special educators. And we've increased 1 day of special education summer school to 15 days from 14 days. However, when you run a full summer school, that's all of that staff for 1 more day. So that explains the increased cost, and you'll see that in the change in your budget in the area called ESY. ESY stands for Extended School Year. Those are programs that we provide during the summer for special needs students so that they don't have a gap in their life. The next thing you'll see, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is we have a $52,151,000 increase in the pension. That number of $451,000 or $52,000 is the same number it was last year. Last year, the Board of Education chose to prepay part of this year's pension. This year, the full amount is in the budget I presented before you. So there's a $50,000 increase in what we're contributing to the pension. Our OPEB, which we contribute to a health insurance reserve for the town, remains fixed. That cost hasn't increased, and we'll continue to contribute to that out of our HIP reserve. This one caught me off guard when we did this year's budget. My utilities increase is more than my transportation increase. Shepherd Hill is seeing an increase of $23,686 projected. We anticipated utilities would go up at Shepherd Hill High School. We have more students at Shepherd Hill moving to pre-K there. All classrooms are filled, and we're running central office there. Plainfield Central, we see a small increase of about $2,300. Plainfield High School is currently projecting for this year to run $37,000 over in electricity and water based on actuals, and $20,000 based on an increase of heat energy based on actuals. Now, you're going to ask Mr. Brenton, do you have an accounting for this? And I do. The accounting for this is in the last year I've spent over $100,000 repairing and replacing all of the rooftop HVAC units at Plainfield High School, which are now all functioning. Some of which have not been functioning in over 5 years. Now that all of those units in HVAC are functioning and pulling full electrical, we're seeing our increase. Capital improvements. You'll notice that within your binder, I'm noting that there's an 82% increase in this line item. It's my largest piece. When we speak to that 82% increase, and I'll go back to it, we're actually talking about the entire 700 object code of capital improvement. The increase in the cost of this, the $168,000 in capital, is explained by these line items which are in your budget. This is an invest in capital projects. This is not an investment in repairing a boiler. These are replacements or new items. You'll also see that I've requested 1 part-time buildings and grounds staff at $26,000. Why am I requesting this? When someone thinks buildings and grounds, you may think mowing the lawn. That's actually just a small portion of what our buildings and grounds do. The primary role of our buildings and grounds is actually repairs. Repairing plumbing, repairing electrical, repairing those things, having those things done internally and in-house, which long-term helps maintain all of our facilities longer and saves us on needing to go out to pay outside contractors for this work. It will be helpful in snow, we need to do things like that. But for myself, this $26,000 just feels like smart money to invest in knowledgeable people who can come in and do repairs for us and help us. You'll note you have the entire capital improvement plan within your binder. It's at the end of your binder. I have sent you information related to the vans, vehicles, and mules and other items. We did just sell the oldest mule, the Kawasaki mule on that list that was given to us when Plainfield High School was done for $26,000. We put it up for auction. I was hoping to get about $500 for that mule, which did not run and did not have a working transmission. Ms. Brandon, what did that sell for on the Gov auction site?
$1,800.
So we got $1,800, and Mr. Cunningham, I think the town already has that money. In my next board meeting, you'll see that we have some other items that we're going to be looking, the board will be approving old tractor and other items like that. If you're a member of the public interested in an old John Deere tractor that's been well cared for by Plainfield Schools, watch our next board meeting, you can see what we're going to sell. All the money is returned to the town of Plainfield.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Part-time building and grounds individual that you're hiring, is that going to be the same individual, or is it going to be contracted? Because you mentioned it's dedicated to our primary focus is repairs.
So we currently have, I feel foolish, this isn't working, but I keep talking to it. Britney Spears up here. We currently have buildings and ground staff. The challenge we have with buildings and ground staff is that we have aging facilities. We have several buildings and ground staff that have retired, that are not interested in working full-time, that have some of those pieces. I am hoping to be able to create a part-time position to lure back someone who's already retired but has years of experience within our buildings. We will have 3 people who have worked buildings and grounds who will have retired in the last 5 years to come back and be able to do some of those pieces, so that I'm getting people who know our buildings, know how to fix them. I'm really impressed with our buildings and ground staff, to be honest. If you look at a school like Plainfield Memorial School, you look at those heaters. When one of those heaters goes at Plainfield Memorial, those old heaters, they actually have talked to the company that I think it's Barrett is the company. They're out of Pennsylvania. They order the parts from one of the guys who used to work for the company. We rebuild them ourselves. I don't hire an HVAC person to do that. Our team actually rebuilds the motors and other pieces. When we have a fan go on the roof of the building, we do those motors. Our buildings and grounds crew are doing that. The Board of Finance is interested. I'd love to bring in my facilities director, have him speak to the level of things that they do. This is a new position. It's a new half-time position. I'm hoping that this position ultimately saves the town money in the long run.
How many currently?
We currently have 2.
I think it's 2.5 are dedicated for grounds maintenance.
Okay.
Across the whole district?
That's all the fields, all the pieces. Musa, the one custodian for the day there, does Musa too. I want to talk about safety and security. I made 2 big blocks here so people can see where they are. I am aware that the chief of police had a slightly different number on the school resource officer. The number I have came from Mr. Cunningham and Ms. Vachon. I'll speak to the number and you have all the breakdown in detail. Let's talk first about the school resource officer. In front of you, you have a document of what does a school resource officer do. School resource officer is much more than a security guard. School resource officers provide a consistent presence on campus. They're a positive role model. They serve as the liaison between the students and the courts. They help families get resources. They're part of crisis management. I can tell you that I went to every single PTO meeting in district and the high school parent council. And the one resounding ask that I have from parents, I'll say 2, because I wouldn't want to discount the PTO. Upgraded playgrounds, which are in our capital improvement plan for a bond, and a school resource officer. School resource officer is on parents' minds. We are looking to restore a school resource officer. I would remind the town of Plainfield that we had a school resource officer over 12 years ago who was in our schools. They build stronger community relationships, and for myself, when I think of youth and children, I think having as many positive interactions with the police as they can is a good thing, especially at an early age. And I think it doesn't just help the schools. Having a school resource officer helps every person in town, building that relationship between the police and the youth. That I have, 97,000 is related to contract raises, which are only 2.5% of the security guards, additional security hours, and additional security. So currently our security guards work 1,200 hours a year. If you were to look at how that fits into a day, you would see that that is not the full length of every school day. I'd like to increase those hours to 1,274. That accounts for approximately $6,500 for each one of the security guards. By adding those 74 hours per year, that gives me coverage in every building every day with security guards. We'd also like to add one security guard at PCS and PHS. That combines to $97,278. As I said, my two largest drivers in the budget, one is special ed, the other is a request, it's a new request, to restore the school resource officer and to updates in school security, which are all personnel related. You have a breakdown that I both sent you and then provided, and if anyone in the public would like it as well, I have additional to the box of how that school resource officer number breaks down. We broke down that number of 124,450 for 10 of 12 months. The school district would pay for 10 of 12 months. I also have that on our website, as well as a list of other districts around us that have school resource officers. I think you'll find that it's considered a norm now to have a school resource officer interacting with the students, given the student safety concern. Next thing you'll see in the budget is a focus on mathematics. I mentioned at the start, if you didn't know, in the last 4 years, every Plainfield elementary school, Shepherd Hill, Moosup, Plainfield, Memorial, have been recognized as a school of distinction for their growth in reading. Plainfield Memorial has been recognized multiple years. Shepherd Hill has been recognized multiple years. We're moving our investment into mathematics, trying to ensure that students have those skills that they need to begin work in mathematics. Approximately $47,000 is a phased implementation of an elementary literacy program. That's not a new literacy program for the entire district. That means we're starting in the youngest grades, and we'll be moving that new literacy program up with the students. The other part of it is $64,000. That is one FTE. I'll say it right now, I do have more staff in this year's budget with the school resource officer in the staffing sheet and the request for the additional math teacher, kindergarten teacher, and PE health teacher that I did in last year's budget. I'll point to those positions. There's a request for an additional math teacher at the high school. Athletics and student activities, you'll see the wrestlers in the upper corner. You may not know, the public may not know that we've had a group of high school students, small group, wrestling with another town. We're hoping to bring that back into Plainfield next year, and we're looking to bring back our Plainfield High School wrestling team, take the mats back that have been at Killingly High School for the last, I think since 2006, and have our Plainfield students wrestle in Plainfield. In addition to that, we're looking to make a change to have the person who's currently, to have a position that's currently a joint athletic director and teacher moved to a current AD. I know there's been some discussion online as to what a high school athletic director does. I've given you a sheet on what a 612 athletic director does. There is a lot to that within compliance, within scheduling, within health and safety, within evaluating all of the coaches who are our educators within the unit. This is an important thing. I'm the father of a child who plays sports in college. I know how important sports in high school were, and I will tell you, her life would be different if she hadn't had good adults and good guidance in high school. We need to acknowledge that to families, having someone who's actually going to make sure that the basketball coach is doing their job matters to families these days. The projected cost of this, including adding the teacher, only totals to $78,000. You'll see that within your budget, or 2 stipends. Those 2 pieces come to 102. To replace those, we are projecting, this would have to be a negotiated contract salary. Regionally, that salary is at about 116. So we're looking at a difference there from 102 to 116. And and then I'm asking for additional PD help. Transportation, this is directly on the sheet you have in front of you. Transportation contract increase is $82,000. We are offsetting part of that by reducing some other equipment costs we have. So our total transportation cost increase here is $65,000. That is much nicer than the $250,000 that we've had over the last few years because of the high increases. But we're looking at that piece, and as I said, my utilities increase is higher than my transportation. We are anticipating approximately $100,000 in grants that are being reduced. This is anticipated. We use a lot of these grants to offset things like our readiness program, like our early childhood program, like Title I. These items, which are in your budget binder, part of a nurse, part of a secretary, part of a reading teacher, part of 2 tutors, and part of a guidance counselor, we anticipate this funding going away. So this $100,000 is part of that $2 million increase. This is being restored to the budget. These people are all currently working for us. These are no new positions. We're just no longer going to have the federal funds to apply to a portion of their salaries. And then this sheet, which is in your binder, is every position change in there. I want to be as transparent as possible because I've told you I'm adding some positions and taking them away. To make it even simpler for it, I put the position here for you. So being reduced within this budget, I've reduced, and this is everything I've just told you. I've reduced a health teacher, I've reduced 2 special ed teachers, I've reduced a grade 2 teacher, and I've reduced 1 computer technician. All of those things have been reduced in this budget. This is the increased security guard hours I told you about. And what have we added? Well, for those special ed teachers, we're adding BCBAs because we feel that that's what those students in those programs need more. We are adding a kindergarten teacher in this budget because we're projecting a higher number of students in kindergarten. If that doesn't come to fruition, that will probably end up being in pre-K. However, Mr. Sugarman is confident that there's grant funding there that will support that. We are adding part-time ground and maintenance. You can see I've got it split there at $13,000 in 2 different budgets. We're adding the security guard officer, the school resource officer, the math and the PD that I've mentioned, the athletic director position, and we've got $8,000 in a part-time secretary for one of the schools so that the secretaries there can take lunch. That is all of the staffing requests that are within this budget, and those are all the staffing requests that are within the budget document that you have. And that is the high overview, 20 slides that I tried to do for you in 20 minutes. Again, we're looking at a total budget of $40,207,822, and I'm open to questions or feedback or to speak to any sections, and I'm happy to talk through anything specific.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I had a bunch of questions and you answered a few of them with what you had presented.
Well, I really appreciate everyone who sent me the questions in advance. I sent you the emails and I actually crafted the presentations based on the questions you sent me in advance. I wanted to be able to be as transparent as possible.
I guess the first question I have is reflected to Shepherd Hill Elementary. I'll give you as much specific as I can so that you can answer the question as effectively as you can. Last year you had budgeted the social worker for $76,000, and this year they're 83, which is like a 9% increase, $6,000 raise.
So when we look at positions like the social worker positions, those are contractual. Okay, so that's just part of the teacher's contract. Something that can cause a social worker to go up in a larger piece, because their contract increase, even with STEP, would only be about 4% this year. But if they got an additional degree, an additional credit degree, which many of them are working towards, that moves them up a step.
I'm looking at, like in one of the grant pages here. It's a numeracy intervention. What is it?
That is a math tutor. So that's a math teacher. The grant calls them numeracy and literacy interventionists. So that's a math teacher who works with the kids who struggle most with math.
So it's a fancy name for a
It's a
math.
fancy name for a math teacher.
Okay.
Going way back, maybe 100 years, what did you do to replace the CEUs?
So the state did away with
I
CEUs.
understand it.
So
Do you have
current,
anything?
no, the state doesn't track units like that. What they do is they track just graduate credits. Teachers who come in have to earn a master's. So that's required to have within a short period of time. Brand new teachers have to complete something called EdTPA, which they need to do. But if you're a veteran teacher over a certain level, we're not submitting, Mr. Sugarman, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not submitting any CEU data to the state. And some of that, to be perfectly honest with you, I think is about state capacity to collect it and do things with it. But don't think the state doesn't legislate all sorts of professional development that we have to have. Teachers have about 16 hours a year of mandated training from things that are in state bills. Everything from teachers are mandated to get training in bullying, sexual harassment, bloodborne pathogens, all of that. And some of those we do in person, some of them we do remotely.
How about the IT area?
As far as training in IT, so the way our IT is set up is we have different levels of IT technician. We have a level 1 technician, a level 2 technician, we have a network specialist, and then I have a director. We do not, they go out and get their own certifications. They're A++ certifications in training. We support some of the testing, but not the training. And we don't automatically move someone up when they get additional certifications because we only have a limited number of positions. So we primarily have level 1 technicians, and then we only have one level 2 technician or 2 level 2 technicians. What we're discovering is we're able to hire people in as level 1 technicians. They're able to come in. A level 1 technician in our district, if you look, is about $45,000 in that neighborhood. They'll come in, they'll work for us for a year or two, and then those who are looking to leave will go to electric boat. We've lost 2 to electric boat. Yeah. We've lost 2 to electric boat. One of whom I'm told almost doubled their salary.
So how does that affect the classroom? The classroom teachers, are they instructed with the IT?
The classroom teachers get instruction in IT. We actually have someone on our staff who both works with our data systems and then trains teachers. Her name is Erin Quinn, and she's in the Alliance Grant. She's paid for out of the Alliance Grant.
Does the town pay for your snow plowing?
We pay for, so I'm happy to answer this. Those buildings and grounds people that I have do our snow plowing. So the town doesn't pay for it, but the town does give us our sand, which we go down and pick up in our sanders. And then the town does the roads right outside. That's been pretty helpful for us. I can think of maybe one occasion where the town helped us plow our lots because we had a plow down. But we have our own plow vehicles. Those are in the capital plan. So in 2 years, I need to replace one, not next year.
What does your resource officer do when it's vacation time?
I don't have a school resource officer right now, but the school resource officer would work for the police during that time. So the plan for the SRO would be that for us, he's working for us. He's following the school calendar. He would take the vacations that the police take. Those would be in accordance with the school calendar, and then for the months of July and August, we would have him report to the town. The school resource officer actually reports to the town. He's a town employee. He's on town benefits, all of those pieces. The money in my budget is actually just kind of a check to the town, to be honest, that I'm paying the town for that time with that person. So he is part of the police union. He directly reports to Mario, and we would jointly work together on hiring that. But he is a Plainfield police officer.
So you pay only while he's working for you, out of your budget?
I pay 10 of the 12 months. And if he does overtime on the roads or other things, that's out of the town.
How much does Sterling pay us per student at the high school?
Brenton, you know that number. It's about 15,000, a little over 15,800 or so.
And it costs us 14 roughly to educate them?
we have an agreement with Sterling, and the cost is based on the cost of the education, and then they pay a portion of central office costs too,
Okay.
the curriculum instructors and other pieces. And then they did at one time, 20 years ago, pay for a portion of the high school construction.
Okay.
Sterling actually helped to build Plainfield High School.
The out-of-town tuitions that we pay,
Yes.
are they subsidized anyhow from other state grants or whatever?
Some of them are. So let's
Because
talk.
I see-
Let's
I
talk
think
about
the
which
other
ones.
VOAG.
Let's talk about which ones are. So the VOAG programs
Yeah.
for the state of Connecticut are heavily subsidized by the state. The state also controls those tuitions. We're responsible for transportation. We're responsible for special education costs. But the VOAG program, students who go to Killingley VOAG, the cost is generally around $6,000 or less. But were a student to go to Killingley High School, their tuition in Killingley High School is about $16,800, I think, because they're charging people in their building grant.
What about the STEM schools? Like
The Charles H. Barrows and those other schools are also magnet schools,
Yep.
so they're subsidized by the state the subsidy is actually a isolation reduction subsidy, and what that means is that they're trying, Charles H. Barrows and some of those other schools are required to have a certain percentage of students who are from urban areas and a certain percentage of students with economic diversity. And students that come from communities like Plainfield, which are considered to be less diverse, have the opportunity to go there, and those tuitions are subsidized based on those items.
Yeah, 'cause I look at what they charge us to send a kid there, and I look at what it's cost us to educate on the way.
Well, there's a couple answers to that. Because someone's asked me that question too. I mean, if someone really wanted to be savvy, you could say, why don't we send all of our kids to the state tech schools? The state tech schools do those pieces. I'll give you a couple answers. First and foremost is there's not that many seats at those schools. The second piece is I can tell you when, a long time ago, I was principal of Putnam High School. We're going back to 2009. And at that time, hi to any Putnam graduates from that time. And when we're going back to that time, we took a look as to whether or not it was actually less expensive to join with Turtlot or other pieces. We found that even with the number of students Putnam had, which was 300, which is far less than what we have, it was significantly more cost efficient for the town to educate them in town. There will never be enough seats at magnet schools to do it. The VOAG program, students have to stay in that VOAG program. If a student gets kicked out of that VOAG program, it remains at Killingley. We're paying 16-some thousand for that student. And there are some towns that are desperate for students right now. I'll use Parish Hill High School as an example. I feel comfortable talking about that. Parish Hill has about a little over 200 students in that older building, which is aging. It's owned by 3 different communities. Of those students, 120 of them are in the middle school. So that means there's less than 100 students at Parish Hill High School. It's very difficult for them to run that school and have it that open. So they've tried to lower their tuition as much as possible because they're trying to keep that piece. Remember, for us, we have agreements with Sterling. We also have some students who come to us at times from Brooklyn, which neighbors us. We try to keep our tuition consistent for all those communities because that's the agreement we have with them. I will say that what you're proposing, though, I think worth noting, is that I think we're going to see in the next decade a push for more school choice when it comes to high schools. And I think we'll see a push for students from more communities to be looking to come to our high school, and a push. I mean, if you look around us, we probably have 8 communities without high schools. Some of those communities have 1 designated high school, but I hear more and more from those superintendents, and I don't want to mention any of those towns, that their family are looking to be able to choose any high school. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, and I think you will ultimately we'll have to make a decision as a community as to whether or not we want to get involved in that competitive tuition game that will come. Because to compete for those students, there will be a competition to have a lower tuition so that you're more appealing to a neighborhood around. When you do that, your district, there's a lot of math involved. But I hope that answers your question.
It does.
Having said all that, that doesn't necessarily impact next year's budget, but I do think in the next 10 years we'll be having that conversation.
So now, back to Plainfield High School.
Sure.
That's the only school you don't put an average class size?
I did for someone, I can send to the Board of Finance again. I sent the Board of Finance all of our class numbers for Plainfield High School because because we have over 40 teachers at Plainfield High School,
Yeah.
and each one of those teachers teaches 6 classes, and we have some classes like band that you may see 38, and then we have a class. I can tell you next year physics there's 20. It will vary, but if we have 11 kids in physics this year, we're running physics because those 11 kids need it for the college they're going to. So we have to work with the fluctuations in each class.
You have any trouble with staffing?
Yes. Special education staffing, I have huge trouble with. I have 5 open special ed positions right now. We are trying to hire an alternative education teacher for our middle school level. That's been open for 3 weeks and I have no applicants. One of the challenges I have with staffing is if you look at the bottom end of our pay scale, the bottom end of our pay scale for new teachers is $45,000, which is, by the way, what our incoming IT people are making. A lot of districts around us have made their bottom area of their teachers in the high 50s. There's a bill currently in the State Department of Education, which I believe is still moving forward, to make the bottom teacher pay in the state of Connecticut $62,000. I don't believe that bill will go through, but I do think that you're seeing more and more districts who are able to lure in new teachers. If you go through your budget binder and you take a look at where those salaries are, take a look at the number of people over 70,000 and then take a look at the number of people under 70,000. I really struggle to find new people based on the contracts we have. I've only negotiated 1 teacher's contract in the town of Plainfield. Next year's the last year of their contract and we'll need to negotiate another one. So when I do so, I'll be having conversations about entry-level teaching positions. Much in the same way that I believe Mr. Cunningham had to have conversations about entry-level officers because we weren't able to bring officers to the town of Plainfield at our low levels because they were easily able to go to other communities. And we want those young teachers. We want those young teachers because we do.
How many
We like our
retire-
veterans too.
How many retiring this year?
That I know of 4, but I haven't built retirees into the budget yet. I used to. Mr. DePietro, I apologize. Almost said my wrong friend's name. The previous superintendent would always build retirees into the budget. The challenge that I have building a large number of retirees into the budget is that 6 years ago, I could have a retiree at $88,000 and find a new teacher at $44,000. I'm not finding that new teacher at $44,000. So I'm not getting the savings out of retirees that we used to have. And we are finding individuals who are veterans who taught in Plainfield, who left Plainfield, and have said that they really like being in our community and with our kids when they come back. And if I have a good teacher who can come back, who has connections to the town, I try to hire every person I can who has connections to the town.
Yeah, subs.
I'm smiling looking at the teacher look. So we don't have enough subs. I had to do an MOU with our paraprofessionals to increase their pay when they substitute so that it equals a sub. We average about 2 to 3 people out per day. I'm able to get about 1.5 subs per building per day. And I'm advertised everywhere. Non-certified subs are making $150 a day. You can apply right on our website. Also advertised on Winnie.
How about MES? Is that moving?
Moosup Elementary School? So first of all, I love Moosup. We had a great grandparents' day at Moosup Elementary School. We do not have space in the other schools to absorb Moosup. That's not there, and that's clear in the facilities study. So for Moosup Elementary to move, there would have to be a building project. The town would have to vote on a building project and bond a building project. So until there's discussion of those things which would come out of the town capital improvement committee, Moosup Elementary is where Moosup Elementary is, and I'm working on a fence at Moosup right now between Moosup and Veterans Park just to get a little bit more privacy there because we're getting a lot of people enjoying that park as the weather getting warmer. It's right by my playground.
Now, the state approved some money for a special ed a while back, didn't they? 40 million or something like that?
So the state increased the percentage.
Okay, I'm gonna say, did you get any of that, or?
We did.
You did?
But that's for this fiscal year. And to explain that equation, actually, Mr. Sugarman? Sure. Can I kick it to you to explain special ed reimbursement because you do a better job at this than I do.
So special education, it's actually called the excess cost grant, and it's legislative approved every year. And so it's dependent upon what the legislature approved. It's not per se an entitlement grant, meaning they set aside this money every year and they're entitled to a certain amount. That cost is dependent upon, one, how many students you're sending out of district, what the cost is over a certain rate of money, and that rate changes every year. So I think right now it's closer to $77,000. So any student that costs more than $77,000 is eligible for the excess cost grant.
It's gone up to 88 this year.
It's 88, so it's a lot more than since I last was dealing with this. And then it also factors in transportation costs too as well. And then you get a percent back of that excess cost. You don't get a full reimbursement. You get a set reimbursement back, and it fluctuates 60% to 70% over the years. If you have a student that is outplaced or you're paying tuition on that is state placed, meaning a student at a SEA, a state educational agency, a DCF placement or so forth, you get 100% reimbursement back for that student. You submit this a couple times during the year because you get 75% of your reimbursement around February timeframe, and then you get the remaining 25% come around May. Reimbursement cost. So it is a moving target every year, and you're doing your best guesstimate based off of your actual students that you currently have outplaced. What do you project next year? The other factor too is this is what happens a lot of times during the school year. You work with a student and family from September, and you're working tirelessly to make things work. You're changing plans, you're putting support in place, and you get to January, February, and you're kind of like, we need to outplace this child, and we're unable to provide service. That child's not eligible for reimbursement until next year. So you're covering the full cost of that child from January, February, until the end of the year. You then can factor that child in your excess costs for the next fiscal year. So that's a lot of the added costs that you see sometimes in special education, is those late year out of placements that you see. And the other thing too as well that just notice is with special education, you could be operating as normal, going about your day, and then all of a sudden on Friday, you have a family register in town and that child is already outplaced. So that family lives in Killingly, they move one street over into Oregon, and you are now responsible for that cost, and they have already been outplaced from Killingly Public Schools. And that happens often in this part of the state, being a transient population in this part of the state, and that can also happen with DCF placements too, fairly quickly.
The other nuanced part of this, just to answer that question, is that change the amount that came was actually related to, we get a projected reimbursement of the amount over 88. So they project they're going to give us 70% of it. The state didn't have enough money to give us 70% of it. So the state turned around and said, we promised you 70%, we're only going to give you 63. So the reason why that legislation occurred was around the state, everyone had budgeted for 70% reimbursement. The state said, oh shucks, we're only going to give you 63, figure it out. And they asked the state to give the money, so we got up to 72, I think.
So that's what that extra appropriation
That's what that extra money is.
Make up for that?
It's for students who are currently outplaced, and if we hadn't had that money, we would have had to find that in our local budget, because it was money that we were told we were going to get. You've heard me make jokes about how things are done in Hartford before. I don't need to do another one. But I will tell you that I do feel comfortable saying I've got a board meeting a week from today. In the board meeting the week from today, in the finance packet, my business manager is going to tell our board that we have an additional $40,000 in special education outplacement costs between now and July 1. Based on students moving in, out of district, those pieces, we just have to pay that. That won't be reimbursed. It doesn't hit that $88,000.
Now, on the capital improvements at the high school, you did some work on HVAC use?
We did significant work. I actually presented that at a board meeting, and I think I sent it to you as well.
Probably. Is it new units or?
No, this is all of the rooftop units. Mrs. Brennan, was it 11 units?
I believe it was.
11 different units on the roof that got repaired.
Okay, repaired.
Repaired.
Okay.
We During my time, I believe we replaced one rooftop unit at the high school because they had to bring in a crane. Dr. Bickham was here when that happened, so that was over 2 years ago. So, but those are units, but I think it's worthwhile, actually, this is a good time to talk about how did they get there. So the reason why they got there is year after year in that section of capital improvements and repairs, when we've got to make cuts, and like I said, I've got 400,000 extra in that line this year. When we have to make cuts in those areas, when I have to make cuts in computers, they just don't get done. So when we had additional money out of the, we had money in the art besser that we had, and that money could be dedicated to HVAC. We had choices of what to do. Some towns, offset some other pieces. I said, we've got this money, let's fix the things that haven't been fixed. So I'm spending a lot of money on repairs. I think when everything's said and done and you look at what we've spent on repairs, it's quite a bit. I'm trying to dedicate time to that. I like our buildings. I like Moosup Elementary. I want to fix those buildings. That was the first all-electric building in the state of Connecticut. I need to keep those buildings going and running.
Now, when you say repairs, like you put new motors in there, or?
Put new motors in there. Some of them, so the units on the roof of the high school, a lot of those units almost run like air conditioners. They have coolants in them in pieces. So those whole units have to come out. If you're interested in HVAC, I actually have all the orders. I learned a lot about those units. A lot of them have had repairs.
Because it seems, how old were the original, from when the school was built?
When the school was built, so 2006.
Because you should be saving on electricity with these new units then.
They're not new units, they repaired them.
Right. Well, I thought you replaced the motors.
The units are, we're swapping out the parts to maintain the units that we have
Okay.
and get them up and running. I will tell you that at the high school, the capital improvement plan, as part of 2026, the boilers at the high school will need to be repaired. Those boilers are 20 years old, and they were not new when they were put in.
They put used boilers in that building?
They weren't used, they just weren't. Buy a Chromebook right now. It's worth, same thing. They were several year older. They had never been installed.
So it was new old stock,
New old stuff.
old technology, upgrading it.
I'm not buying Chromebooks right now because this is just for you to know for those pieces. Chromebooks have a 10-year license on the software. Yeah. If I buy a new Chromebook right now, there's so many left over from COVID that the ones we would buy from CDW only have 6 years left on that license because they've been sitting around at CDW for 4 years. So there's a lot of that stock around. And for what it's worth, Chromebooks this week are $300 and not $220 like they were in my budget. But I'm expecting the tariffs to go up and down. It'll all work out in the end.
So back to the capital. You sent us this new updated capital improvement sheet?
Correct. The reason I had to do that is by town bylaw, I believe it is. I have to go 5 years out, and then the one I had sent you originally included this year and didn't go 1 year out further. So what we did was, when the town gave me that piece, my director of facilities, Paul Kodowski, who's been with the district well over 15 years, Mrs. Brenton, myself, and each of the principals went through and we did a revisitation of every building, made sure every item was on there, and then I went to my capital improvement committee, and they made changes in other pieces. So some of the numbers changed from what I sent you to what was in the original document.
Well, you've got new items in this
Correct.
document as opposed to this one, but I think if I go back into last year's budget and the last 10 years' budget, there's one line item at Moosup Elementary, it's aggravating me. It wasn't in this one, but it's in this one for the next 5 years.
What's that?
Asbestos. When are we going to finish that?
No, actually, so it's a great question. So if you go on our website,
Yep.
we've got the asbestos. So all of the asbestos at Moosup is contained.
Last I had heard, it was contained to closets at the end of the halls.
So those reports are all online. You can see where things are contained. But I have to put money in the I have to budget for it every year or anticipate for it, because if the asbestos becomes uncontained for any reason, and it's not unique to Moosup, it's called the mastic under tiles. What they use under the tiles in many buildings contains that asbestos, and if for some reason that gets disturbed, we have to be prepared to respond. But we get regular inspections on that, and we've actually, to save the town money, we've had someone internally get trained to do a series of the inspections so that we can do that as well.
How do we get rid of it? Is there, at any point in time where we're not having asbestos stuff in that building?
We would have to, some of the asbestos is contained under multiple layers of flooring.
We
So-
had it encapsulated years ago,
encapsulated.
so professionals come in and they fully seal it. It's not that you're removing it because, you know, in these cases, you would have to literally shut down the wings of buildings.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, quite a few years back, they were talking about doing that over the summer, taking it out of those closets at the end of the hall. And then there was some that was underneath carpeting that was all going to come out too. And it was multiple years you were saying this is going to happen. The question is it happening, or are we just budgeting for it every year and not doing it?
Every year,
Yeah.
we're budgeting to respond to a need to a replacement of all the science books that it's part of a science cycle that we have with that. I will say this, if you look at our middle school is unique in the state of Connecticut in its science program. We probably don't sell it enough, but we have one of the highest performing middle school science programs in the state, significantly outperforming the STEM schools. And that's part of that series.
Okay, I'll say that too, probably. The science also cost, was it PCS that science? Yes. So the science cost at PCS is also, it's a lot of consumable costs.
Okay.
And when we talk about consumables, that's things that actually students are like doing work in. It's a one-time use.
Okay.
So it's not a textbook that we're purchasing every year. It's the consumable cost that's associated with the science curriculum at the middle school. And the other costs associated with that is with science, you have a lot of consumable costs. With running the science
The
program.
reason it jumped out is the year before, there was nothing on that line item for it. I was just wondering if it was textbooks, but how often do you have to replace the consumables then?
So last year, I believe we absorbed some of that cost into grant funds to kind of absorb and offset that. A lot of those grant funds were associated with our ESSER COVID funds, which are fully liquidated for us now, and for the state. So that cost is now, we're absorbing that into the district cost.
The other question I have is with the reintroduction of the SRO, is that going to be strictly for the high school?
No.
Okay.
No, so the school resource officer would operate in all of the schools.
Okay.
And the school resource officer would be doing programming like DARE in all of the schools. And I think it's important the community knows this. It's not a security guard in the schools with a gun. It's a staff member working in each individual school. They do have the ability to respond. And the primary housing would be on the high school Shepherd Hill because we have the most students on campus. But they would be spending some days at the middle school memorial, and then they would be headed over one day a week to Moose Up to be there with those students as well.
How many times have you, this year, have had to call the police for any kind of an incident?
You know, that's a broad question because I probably talk to the chief 2-3 times a week about something. And those aren't always calling about an incident. And there are times that we call the police to come up and do things which are not in response to an incident. So for example, the Plainfield PD, I don't know if the community knows this, they brought the dogs up to our preschool classes. And they were up, I think, 3 different times, Mr. Sugarman, that week, visiting different classes with the dogs, bringing the kids in, interacting with them. It's exactly the sort of thing an SRO does. And I would say that the idea that the police are on our campus in some form 1 or 2 times a week is not unusual. So we're taking them off the street or when they're available. They're also, when they're on our campus and they're doing something with the dog, if there's a crime, they have to go respond to the crime. And we have those pieces. There are other times, for example, this Monday of this week, I asked the police just to be a presence on campus because there was rumors about something and I wanted the families to be comfortable. So the police came up and put a car at the high school. I'm sorry, at the middle school. So I would say it's safe to say that every week they're on our campus, one of our campuses, probably twice.
Is there a problem getting them to respond?
Our police respond very quickly. So I don't know, but I think the answer to that too is, if I call them up and ask them to bring the dogs, that's can I do it? If I call them up and say, we have a person on our campus, when we had a person on our campus at the high school 3 years ago and we were trying to find them, I had the cops there instantly because that's an emergency. If I call and say, hey, can I ask you a question about how to handle something that, you know, that fits the priorities of the day.
When you call, is it 911?
We call dispatch. The school calls dispatch.
And why is that versus 911?
That's the number we have programmed into all of our phones. So it goes right to Plainfield PD dispatch.
I have a question. Are you done, Ted? I have,
Yeah.
under enrollment and staffing,
Yes.
Shepherd Hill looks like pre-K is that an issue that we have to address, that there's 26 students there?
No, if you take a look at this, so thank you so much for asking about pre-K. Next year, our pre-K program is actually growing. So if you take a look at the fantastic flyer with the small child on it, we recently have gotten our readiness grant. We're funding most of pre-K, by the way, through grants, through readiness and early childhood grants. Because the state's changed the way it's doing its funding, we're actually changing what we're doing next year. So currently, the grants that we've been told are going to be awarded, that we know are there, that we're very, very confident. Are they officially official? We'll have 32 students in 2 full-day classrooms. That could go up to 40, but we know we'll have 32. That'll be done through lottery. So we have a lot of families who want the full day. And then we'll have 63 students attending half-day classrooms. We currently have 4 classrooms at that school in the pre-K wing. There are specific laws for readiness. There are specific laws for class sizes. There are a number of adults we have to have based on every child. And then there are other criteria that have to occur within the schools for those pieces. I walked a community member through the schools earlier this week, and I mentioned that within certain rooms I have to have sunlight shining on 15% of the floor. So there are windows in certain places because we have to meet those criteria. There's a lot of guidelines around early childhood, including guidelines specific as to what the playground has to look like.
Mr. Brenton, can I answer the specific question real quick, just to clarify? So the reason why you see 26 in classroom there, because our current structure of pre-K is we have 4 classrooms, and there's 2 sessions in each, because the only thing that we operate now is partial day. So it's 13 and 13 in a class at the start of the year. So that's why you see it as 26. That number has actually grown throughout the year, because when those numbers are pulled, we pull from October 1 count numbers. But those numbers have steadily increased throughout the year. So that's why you see pre-K at 26. It's not 26 kids at one time in a pre-K classroom. It's the AM and PM session they're running.
Thank you.
Let's go back to technology and the capital.
Sure.
What does that include? That's your licensing and your laptops or whatever you might be buying? Or?
Yes, so it varies. But primarily it includes teacher units, student units, and then smart boards, or digital screens, video boards. We also have a PEG-PISA grant that helps us with that, and then some of that comes through for E-ring. You're going to ask me, why is technology on that list? Technology is on that list because the way our policy is written is that for items over a certain amount, whether I budget for them or not, I can only buy them if they're on that list. When I was hired by Plainfield Schools, I had a conversation with Mr. Cunningham about a flashing sign. And I was told that we had a flashing sign that had been installed that had not gone through planning and zoning and had not been on the capital plan. So I was told when I came in that it was of high value to the town, that anything I was going to be spending, which fell under capital and fell under a certain amount, needed to be on the plan. So you'll see technology in every school on that plan for that reason. because I want to be sure that I'm in accordance with our procedures and town policy.
So my question is there a mistake at the high school? Because you're only showing $5,000 there instead of 30 or 25 like you're showing everywhere else.
It's probably based on,
Is it just for next year?
Yes.
oh, it's just for next year.
That's what's in the
Because
current
they're off cycle with their Chromebooks. So I'm not buying Chromebooks for the high school next year, they got them this year.
Okay.
So yes, that's the
Because
answer.
in your original proposal, I think it showed it as 30,000.
Correct, but we've purchased them for them. We have a cycle, it's in our technology plan. The technology plan is also on our website of what gets replaced when.
And I see you moved your mule, you took that away.
Take it away.
I'm glad, because I think you were paying for that. $65,000 at the pickup truck. Not here.
I am happy after the meeting as well to answer any questions. I know there's no public comment on it, but if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or if someone wants to email me, every document the Board of Finance has is on our website under budget, including my presentation is uploaded there as a PDF.
So now, let's go back again. I'm still hung up on capital.
That's okay.
PCS, you're showing you're going to do some duct cleaning up there.
We do duct cleaning at all of our schools every year.
It's being done all of them?
Yes.
All right, because it's not showing on any other budgets in the future, that's why I was questioning it.
We do it at every school every year. It's in the budgets. We do it in cycles.
Yeah.
So if you take a look, we can't, it's very expensive to do a whole building at one time. So we do portions of each building every year.
Okay. Yeah, because it doesn't show like Plainfield High School having it done or any other schools.
Some of the other schools do put budget for the duct cleaning within their operating budget under like repair and maintenance, not necessarily as a capital.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard, you can't do a recurring thing as capital repair.
Does each teacher come up with their own budget?
No. So my budget process, I first meet with all of my heads the first week of October. And I go over the priorities for the year. We talk about the needs. My business manager does some projections of where things are. We talk about retirement. And we actually start looking at scheduling at the high school. They have until the first week of December to get their budgets to me. So there's 11 different budgets that are delivered to me, the 11 different sections of your binder. And then during the month of December, we do meetings with every single school, every single department. We meet with each one twice. We do an initial, we look at their proposals. After we go through those, we make some internal adjustments. I make my cuts. I meet with each one of those departments. A place like Plainfield High School, when he gets his initial budget in October, he then meets with his departments and he says, let's talk about next year's budget. Here's what we did this year. What did we spend? What did we not spend? What do we need to do? The larger buildings are slightly more complex, like Plainfield High School, because they have things like the Perkins Grant. And the Perkins Grant has to be done as part of that cycle because that purchases machinery for tech ed and things like that. So we have to be sure that we have those supplies. So every building builds its own budget through the months of October and November and brings it to me in December. Probably very similar to the way the town does.
You share that with the Board of Ed?
I do. So within my presentation, my first presentation to the Board of Ed is in February, and we have a series of meetings. We used to, when I started, we did these meetings in December. I'm sorry, we did these meetings on Saturdays. But after a very lonely Saturday in Plainfield Middle School, where there was not a lot of people who were there, I moved those to weekday nights, and we've had much better participation. In fact, this year I think, Mr. Broughton, you can correct me, I think we had more people at this year's budget presentation than anyone we've had for the last 4 years. So it was pretty highly attended. But yes, my budget timeline is actually right in your mind. And on the presentation. But the reality is I'm always budgeting. I'm always budgeting. We were talking today about ways to reduce overtime. Because we have a series of items we know need to get done that don't make the budget. And if you make cuts, and I'm open to the possibility you may, those items that are on that list of cuts, those don't go away. Those are still needs. They're in the budget because we need them. So we have those there so that if for some reason we can make those things happen, we try to make them happen. Sometimes we don't, and the units on the roof of the high school sit for 11 years. Sometimes I can't.
You understand, at least from my perspective, I don't vote my conscience. I vote what I think the people are going to want me to say. If I had my way, I'd give you another 10%.
I appreciate that.
That ain't going to happen.
What I heard was 10%.
How is the facilities director working out?
It's been fantastic.
Seems like you've done a lot of work this year.
Not only are we getting a lot of work done, he is finding efficiencies in overtime. We moved a position to be a swing position to cover overtime in different buildings. It was actually his suggestion to add that half million to grounds to try to address some of those things and keep the costs down. So I'm lucky to have the people I have in Plainfield on facilities.
So is he just paperwork, or is he turning wrenches also?
He does both those things.
Okay.
In fact, I would like him to turn less wrenches.
Well, I understand that, but you've only got 2.5 people.
So I did a correction there. In our books, it's 3. So I have 3. So I have 2 assigned high school Shepherd Hill, and then I have 1 assigned PCMS, PMS on that campus. So there's 2 people that fully do the entire, all of those grounds in high school Shepherd Hill. I will say this year, at the start of the summer, for the first time, I also brought in some contract work to help because I wasn't happy with the condition of the baseball fields and those fences, and the fences around Shepherd Hill had just gotten overgrown for a while, and we contracted some outside landscape work to address all those fences before they became a problem.
Sometimes it needs to be done.
Sometimes it needs to be done.
There's only so much, there's no 3 of them, so.
The other advantage of having that person in that position is that he knows the vendors better than, remember before this was
So
myself.
the principals will call me.
Principals were calling.
Yeah. And
So-
this person hopefully can prioritize what's an emergency, what's not quite as much of an emergency. So things are getting done in the right order, not just because it was closed.
And he can make sure something that could be an emergency is getting attention before it becomes an emergency.
That would save us a lot at the high school.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions you asked me in advance. I appreciate these questions. These have been great questions. If anyone in the community or any of you have further questions, I'm happy to email you.
If there are no other questions for the superintendent, I will entertain a motion that we accept the presentation. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Sean and seconded by Brenton. Okay, I can. Motion has been made and seconded by Linda to accept the presentation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion that we adjourn. So moved. Motion made to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. We are adjourned. We are adjourned.